LinkedIn is a good place for artists to go to find work. So I've been working now part-time as a professional artist for the last couple of decades. I'm on a mission to go to full-time. The work isn't really there, so I'm looking for other opportunities, and LinkedIn being a sort of social network for business people to find new job opportunities, I thought, okay, great, let's try it. I've had a LinkedIn account for years, maybe as long as I've been doing artwork, so at least 10, 15 years or something. I've never really had much in the way of opportunity from it. I just thought, okay, I'll create it along with all the others like Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Pinterest, whatever. Let's just create all the social platforms and get a gist of how they work, see if they can aid me in some way. Just having an account there isn't really going to do anything. You can use it as a sort of CV, a resume to sort of put some bits up, but people in the last, I don't know, like I say, at least a decade have never contacted me directly through LinkedIn and asked me specifically for work or to work with me. And that's despite the fact that at one point I did think about getting some testimonials from people, and I managed to get, I don't know, a few hundred sort of endorsements at least from different people on my sort of LinkedIn network. So I'm there, the profile's all padded out, the kudos or the social proof is there ready to go. So I'm in a prime position to potentially apply for jobs on LinkedIn. The trouble is there aren't many. There's some, you type in artist for jobs or illustrator, something like that, and you will get results, which is great. If you do a local job search, in your local area for art jobs, you'll rarely come up with anything, certainly not something a bit more, catered to this kind of anime, manga, game art that I'm sort of doing. Normally the pay is pretty poor. So, they're asking for maybe even a junior level artist who's very competent. This might be someone who's been practicing their craft for the last decade, who has, managed to gain 10,000 or 30,000 hours of experience under their belt before even starting these kind of junior positions. And there's going to be certain skill sets that you're going to need depending on the certain type of job. Most of the jobs are generally going to be, like if I type in artist, it's going to be like game artists. So if you're a game artist, you're going to be doing a lot of 3D. Occasionally there are 2D game artist jobs on there. For someone like me who's completely 2D, does more illustrative, hand-drawn artwork, my 3D game is poor. I mean, I know the basics. I could put something very basic together, like the interior of a room or something, but that would be very basic Google SketchUp style stuff. And occasionally you'll get animator positions. Again, I understand how animation works. If you put me in a room with a bit of software that I've never learnt before and said, go make an animation, I could do it. I understand the principles of animation. I've done a few short ones over the last few decades, but it's not something I could walk into a job and say, yes, I'm an animator. So for me personally, I'm looking specifically for these 2D art jobs. And like I say, there just aren't that many. However, there's a lot of artists that are looking for them. So the whole system makes it quite oversubscribed. The pay's then quite low. And you just think, wow, I have to get really, really good in order to compete with so many people just to get a job, which at times is, it's that kind of minimum wage, entry level kind of, you think, well, would I not just be better working at McDonald's? I don't need to really stress or worry or ever feel any kind of pressure that, I'm maybe not good enough to perform amongst my peers type of thing. Like, why bother going for such a high demand job that does require a fair degree of responsibility? You have to be on form, you have to be creative, you have to exercise technical skill. And sometimes even artists that have, lots of experience and are good at their craft, they're going to have bad days. They're going to have days where they're stressed, they can't figure out the perspectives or the anatomy, or something's a bit off about their drawings, illustrations, artwork or something. And do you want that stress? Do you want that stress for like such a low paid job? However, I did find one job recently which looks like it would work for me quite well. It did involve needing an understanding of AI platforms like MidJourney to create art. And it's one of these things where I kind of feel like you can be an artist like myself and you can be super bitter and angry about the state of AI and how it's basically taking everyone's jobs. And it is, people worry, oh, I don't think it's going to take jobs. It might take a few, but and I'm a bit worried about that, but I'm generally not too worried about AI. It's like, well, it has taken jobs. The just people don't know about it. People are just slowly sort of dropping out of the market or being priced out of the market because they can't compete with what there is now. It's not a thing that's going to be a concern for the future. I'm at a point now where over the last 2 years, AI has got good enough to compete with artists in general. So there's a certain type of artist that it's competing with, not all artists, because artist is quite a broad term. But yeah, I think we're probably at a point now where 25% of all artists that would have otherwise been working professionally as artists or semi-professionally perhaps are no longer able to work or sustain the work they're doing, or they were at a point maybe where half their income was coming from art, kind of like me, and half of it was coming from other things, and now that half has shrunk to just a half or a third or a quarter of what it was, and now 90% of that person's work needs to come from elsewhere outside of art. So that's kind of the state of play of things at the minute, I think. So, like I say, there was a job, I applied for it. I was like, oh, well, this is one of the rare ones where the pay seemed pretty good. It was a short-term contract and I think the pay was around $5,000, $6,000 a month, which for art is pretty good. It's kind of what you would expect to be reasonably skilled at what you're doing. It did require some use of AI. I do understand AI, and I'm trying to work with it rather than against it because it's there. And I thought, okay, if a company needs an artist that has traditional art experience but also now understands this new emerging technology of AI, and if that's what they want, if companies are willing to work with that, why be this sort of stubborn purist that just does their traditional stuff and doesn't find any work? Why not potentially go where the money or the work is in this instance, and well, not sell your soul, but just do what needs doing. So I was willing to give it a go, and I was experienced where the experience was needed. So I applied. The trouble was over 1,000 other people applied for that same job. And I got a letter today, a week later, basically saying, thank you, but no thanks. And this is pretty typical. This is LinkedIn. You'll get a job that will be posted. And if it's a good job with a good rate of pay, not your sort of McDonald's or Starbucks barista minimum wage equivalent, but if you get like, okay, this is a fair amount of work, it might not even be like an amazing amount of work, but it's fair, $5,000, what's that, about £4,500, something like that per month. It's like, okay, this is pretty good. Yeah, over 1,000 people applied. And even though I could check box everything, even though I could say, I've got 20 years of experience, I don't necessarily mention it's part-time, but the experience is there. And I don't think it really matters whether you've got 20 years of part-time experience or even 3 years of full-time experience, as long as you have years of experience plus a good portfolio. I think that's what you want. And as long as you can demonstrate that you know what you're doing in some way, shape or form. I mean, you never really know when you apply for art jobs what exactly someone's looking for. So if you're quite multidisciplined, like someone like me, I've done website designs, graphic designs, I've even done tattooing. I can do lots of different styles of art, lots of different applications of art and graphic design. But sometimes a job description doesn't necessarily list enough information. So you apply kind of a little bit blind, you put your best foot forward, you put your portfolio out there, and you get rejected like I did in this case. I mean, looking back, perhaps what I should have done is to message them up front and just to say, what exactly are you looking for? Can you be more specific so that I can, tailor my CV a little bit? Would that have worked? I don't know. But yeah, this is the state of play. So I don't know, having applied for maybe 20 LinkedIn art related jobs and having not got anywhere, like I would say maybe out of the 20, 3 or 4 of them replied just to say thank you, but no thank you. The other 17 or so didn't have the courtesy to do that. And in fact, out of the 20, it turned out that like you could tell they were just like phantom jobs, ghost jobs. They weren't actual proper jobs. After you went through the application process, you realised that effectively it was a bit of a scam. You were trying to be drawn towards, say, a crowdsourcing platform, like Fiverr, Upwork, that kind of thing. And they wanted you as a member, they wanted you as an army of freelancers to basically do work that would come into their platform and they would get the cut, for facilitating the work. And you're like, well, this isn't actually, this might be a bit of an opportunity, but it's not a job like as it was advertised. So some of these listings can actually be quite deceiving. But firstly, when I say, is it worth it? I mean, you have to be the judge of these things for yourself. Like, you have to look at your standard of artwork and you have to maybe decide whether you feel like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe it didn't work for him, but my artwork is so much better or was so much more on point that, it would probably work for me, or maybe it wouldn't. But statistically, a job has 1,000 applicants. Do you really think you're going to be that 1 in 1,000 that are going to get this job? I mean, someone has to do it, but then you could say that about, winning the lottery. Someone has to win it. But then, if you don't really understand how statistic works, you're just going to buy lottery tickets all day and then wonder why you're disappointed all the time, right? I kind of think like there must be an easier way to do this. And I think it's definitely worth going out there, trying things. That's what my sort of art career, or that's what this channel is about. It's about the journey to become a professional artist. And it's about documenting that, not just saying, here's how I make £10 billion per day selling art, which, let's be honest, no one can emulate. I mean, I'm being a bit, I'm exaggerating for effect, but there's so much of that. There's so much of, I can give you the one bit of advice, the one tip, but is it going to work for you personally? Because if it was that easy, we'd all be doing it. I mean, I'd rather just be realistic and say, okay, this is a thing that I tried. There could be potential with this, but I didn't find potential in it. Or this is a thing I tried, it was a complete waste of time. Or this is a thing I tried, and there's something here. So that's kind of what I'm testing out right now in this journey to become the professional. And so far as LinkedIn goes, is it worth people exploring? Generally, no. I think all these things you have to try for yourself. But yeah, just go on there, search for art jobs, look at the amount of people that have applied, because normally there's a count that says, 100 plus people have applied for this role. And then you have to kind of think, well, do you want to play those statistics, those odds kind of games? As a better alternative, and I don't know if this is a better alternative because I've not tested it, but I would imagine that LinkedIn would be better if you go out there and find companies that you might want to work with that aren't necessarily hiring right now, and then you try to get your work in front of them somehow. I mean, this is going to be a lot of frustration, a lot of rejection. I would imagine that if you can find 20 companies that you think, yeah, I would like to work with you, only 1 or 2 will even acknowledge your portfolio, and maybe 1 will write back and to say thanks but no thanks. But at least then you're not competing with anyone. Maybe you've approached a company, you've got just the right skill set, the right amount of talent and whatever, and you're coming just at the right time because they're thinking, we want to expand, we want to maybe take someone else on. And instead of them now thinking about going out, putting job offers and job postings out onto the internets, they've got you there ready and waiting to potentially, walk straight into that job. And it might be a case of being quite persistent. You might have to message that same company 3, 4, 5 times. I mean, I've never done the kind of relentlessness because I feel like it's a bit impolite and a bit rude, but at the same time, we're at the point now, I think in 2025, where, times are desperate, and, it might, if you have skills in something, let's just say you've been practicing your craft for 10 years, you're really good at it, you feel like you deserve a job using these skills, and you would definitely be an asset to a company. Maybe you have to be a bit relentless in finding that work. Perhaps you have to keep reminding people that you exist, that you're there, and that's just how it is. It doesn't have to be something you're going to have to do forever, but perhaps in the interim, in order to get that work, that's something that needs to be done. So yeah, I'm going to be exploring sort of future possibilities in the art space to get work, whether it's, you know, doing what I just said, cold calling, I guess, or whether it's sort of using social media platforms to see where I go. So if you're interested in following my artistic journey and seeing how I get on with that, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.